Good morning, everybody. We have a mixed trade in the grain markets here early on Friday morning. It is 6:30 a.m. Central Time. March corn futures down 2 cents at 424 and a half. January soybeans up a half cent at 1168 and 3/4. March Chicago wheat down 4 cents at 580 and a half. March Kansas City wheat down 2 and 3/4 at 547. March spring wheat is up a quarter cent at 553 and 3/4. So fairly quiet here in the grain markets this morning. Soybean export sales continue to decline. We've seen lows for the marketing year in weekly export sales each of the last 4 weeks. Last week's total sales of about 407,000 metric tons were down 47% from the previous week and down 68% from the prior 4 week average. China is still the largest buyer here. They accounted for the vast majority of those sales. Interesting to note that unknown destinations canceled a total of 539,000 metric tons of purchases. It's certainly possible, I suppose, that China is responsible for some or all of those cancellations. This should not be a surprise. This is pretty predictable stuff here that China would begin to buy Brazilian soybeans and kind of taper off their purchases of U.S. soybeans. We know that beans out of Brazil are a lot more competitive versus the U.S. for that February, March, April, May timeframe, and China has already begun to book Brazilian beans for that timeframe. So export sales may very well continue to drop off here. That would be perfectly normal. Brazilian soybean production estimates remain highly variable. Another group, Solaris, was out yesterday. 129.5 was their number, down sharply from 133.9 previously. Ag Rural was at 132.2 earlier in the week. So we're starting to see a few more estimates below that 130 million metric ton mark. Most groups are still in the 130 to 135 range. For reference, last year's crop totaled 126, and that was a record. So just about every estimate out there, even the lower ones, would still represent a record crop if realized, and that's just because Brazil continues to increase acreage. It's not because the yields are necessarily going to be the best ever. Continue to hear some chatter regarding additional Chinese purchases of U.S. corn and wheat. China accounted for only 11% of last week's total corn sales. According to yesterday's report, China was almost totally absent from the wheat sales sheet, but had been a larger buyer in the previous week. We have not seen a flash sale of U.S. corn, soybeans, or wheat to China since November 6th, I believe. Remember, a flash sale is any single sale above 100,000 metric tons. South American weather is, I would say, slightly improved or improving. A lot of Brazil will see 1.5 to 2 inches of rain over the next 7 days, and even more than that in the extended period. Argentina will be dry over the near term, but there are some rains expected to return at mid-month. Some of these amounts are less than ideal, they're less than normal, but they should be enough to avoid any major crop disaster here. Hope for additional coronavirus stimulus continues to build. There is a bipartisan $908 billion aid package that has gained a little bit of momentum in U.S. Congress after a standoff that has lasted months and months and months. What the government has done, and especially some of these representatives from states that have instituted significant lockdowns and restrictions, and especially the shutdown of small businesses, it is absolutely terrible what they've done. They've shut down small businesses, they've put people out of work, yet they have failed to pass any sort of stimulus bill, which is an absolute travesty. This should have been done months ago, and we hope that they get it done sooner rather than later. USDA will release its monthly crop report next Thursday. This is the monthly crop production and WASDE report. USDA could do a whole bunch of things here, anything from demand adjustments to adjustments for the this year's crops. So I'll talk a little bit more about that next week. Remember, on Monday night, I will be doing the second edition of the Grain Marketing 101 series. It'll be called Know Your Numbers. Chris Barron will be a guest on the show. He's from AgV Solutions. We're going to talk about farm budgets, revenues, that sort of thing as it relates to marketing. Chris is a friend of mine. This will be a really good conversation. It'll be streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook at 7 o'clock Central Time on Monday night. The corn market has rebounded following that sell-off early this week, so the action is not necessarily terrible. We're off the highs, we're off the lows, we're kind of in no man's land here. When you look at the March corn chart, we're kind of back above that uptrend line that had been in place after a brief trade below it. Funds are still hefty long, 253,000 contracts at yesterday's close. So there's always the risk of some additional liquidation here between now and the end of the year. Ethanol looks like a disaster waiting to happen potentially. Ethanol stocks are surging as demand falls. Gasoline demand was the worst since mid-June last week. Soybean market has acted better after that sharp sell-off earlier this week, kind of same deal as corn. Funds estimated to be net long 177,000 contracts at yesterday's close. That's come down quite a bit, but that's still a very hefty net long. Historically, predictably, as I mentioned, Chinese buying and overall export sales have declined. That's not a surprise. Wheat market has been kind of back and forth here. You've got dryness across the U.S. plains. That's still an issue. Poor demand is also still an issue. While still comfortable, the U.S. stocks-to-use ratio in wheat is projected to be the tightest since 2014. The global stocks-to-use ratio, however, is projected to be record high. So even though we've got a little bit tighter situation in the U.S., still not a problem globally. Cattle market saw some big losses yesterday. Spot month cattle were down $1.10, down $1.35 in the February's. More minimal losses in the deferred contracts. Spot month feeder cattle were down $2. We were down more than $1 in a lot of these contracts. Cash cattle was kind of variable, 107 to 110. I think most of it was 110 yesterday. Box beef market was lower. Ahead of the cash open, the Dow Jones is up 130 points. Futures above 30,000 again. S&P's up 12. We've got an unemployment report out later this morning. Unemployment expected to come in at 6.8%, down just a hair from last month. Bonds are a little bit lower. U.S. dollar is a little bit lower. Crude oil is up 53 cents at 46.18 in the January WTI. Precious metals are higher. If you'd like some more information, visit my website, www.standardgrain.com. Go to that website, click on Grain Marketing Plan if you would like to know when, how, and specifically I am pricing corn, soybeans, and wheat throughout the year. Sign up for that subscription service. It's $49 a month. It includes my morning email, which goes out every business day at 6:30 Central Time, as well as a text message service. I'll let you know about all the overnight headlines in a quick read every morning, and I'll let you know exactly when, how, and specifically I'm pricing these crops. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. I will talk to you on Monday.